Hey folks, I have found a really simple way to lock my feeders in place on my crap high 560 P4 pick and place machine. Okay, seriously, I'm not taking the angle grinder to the machine. Not yet, anyway. Stay tuned for that one. But stacks of people on comments to my last video and on my live stream and in Discord and via email and in Facebook have all mentioned to me that they think the issue of the machine bouncing is going to be directly related to the fact that the feeders are not locking into place, that there's a lot of slop, that they move really easily. Now, I did some experimenting obviously with the weights that I mentioned and actually just holding a feeder really stably when I was checking my bounce, and I couldn't see any difference at all. But I thought, you know what? Let's find a way of locking the feeders into place so they don't move at all, and I can rule that out as a potential issue, or I'll gladly admit that I'm wrong, and if this actually fixes the bounces, well, there you go. It'll be amazing, and I'll be forever grateful to all the people that suggested doing this. Now, the most recommended way to do this is with a shim or something to lock the back of the feeder in place so it doesn't move up and down. That's not what I did. Let's go have a look at how the feeders lock into place and what my solution is. So here's a feeder all on its own, and as you can see, there's a fair bit of movement. This is not the worst of the feeders, it's not the best of the feeders. It's just this particular feeder that has my 100k 0402 resistors in it in feeder position number 2. Doesn't matter which feeder position I put this in, it's the same amount of movement. Let's have a look at the feeder and see how the tensioning is done. Okay, here's the same feeder. Just to show you, somewhere on here it says 100k, there we go. 100k 0402 resistors, it's the same one. Bang. So, as you can see from the handle, it opens and closes this little notch. Okay? And this screw over here decides where this sits via a concentric nut that moves a little section inside here. It's hard to explain, really hard to see, but what you do is you loosen a grub screw that's just inside here, just enough so this can turn, and then I'm going to try to turn this without having the screwdriver in the way of the camera. You'll be able to see that as this turns around, it changes the tension here. Okay, so to get the locking in the best it can be, I'm grabbing my finger, putting some tension on it, and getting it to the apex where it's exactly as tight as possible, which is just there. Okay? Then what I have to do is hold this section together because it's extremely loose, way looser than I think it should be, and I tighten the grub screw. Can make it really tight so there's no slip. And now that's in its locked position, its most locked position. But look at this. Can you see this? Now, there's nothing really holding this down except for this screw, and the only thing holding this screw is the grub screw. So getting this to sit really flush and tight so there's no movement is proving extremely difficult. And when I say extremely difficult, I'm talking about impossible. See that? If I turn this over carefully, don't make my reel fall away, there's nothing on the other side holding it. So that's it. This whole mechanism is pretty loose. Now I'll show you what I found when I put this back on the feeder bank, and I'll discuss options that people were suggesting to me, which is basically to stick a shim or something over on this side to tighten this section here to keep it in place. And then I'll show you the much simpler solution I found, which keeps this completely still. Let's go. Okay, here's the feeder back, not locked in. So, front down, handle down, push it quite firm. That's now locked in place. And as you can see, makes no difference, right? So, the problem with putting a shim just here is that normally a shim would work where it's wider at the top and thinner at the bottom. So as it gets pushed down, it locks even more. But how do I get a shim in there? How do I get a shim in when I've got 30 feeders in here and I need to pull one feeder out in the middle and change some parts? And then how do I get the shim back in when the whole feeder bank is full? That's the first problem. The second problem is each one of the feeders that go on here, because they all have a different amount of movement, they also have a slightly different amount of space here. And that space is not coming from different lengths here. It's coming from different amount of movement and wobble and stability here at the front. So having every single one of these feeders locked at the closest position I can, like I just did with my finger, still leaves me with every feeder being slightly different. So I'd need to make custom shims for each one of these feeders to keep them all locked. So I can't see a solution where shims are going to work and they're going to allow me to remove the shim to get the feeder off when the feeder is in the middle of a bank without me pulling all of the feeders from the left onwards or the right onwards out already to get to that one feeder, which is crazy. So I've come up with a much simpler solution, and it completely locks the feeder in place. 100% no movement. And this is it. A little 3D printed black box. And the black box sits just in here. And the box, when locked, no movement at all. So rather than trying to counter the movement here, which is already too late, I need to stop the wobble and movement here. And the way I do that is bracing the front of this feeder against the edge here. And there's now no movement. So, how do I keep them in place? Well, that's easy. Here's another one, and it's got some tape on the back. Can we get the tape? I'm trying to do this one hand on camera, which is probably a bit silly. And lock it in place. There we go. Doesn't move. And now when I take this off and take the feeder out, the block stays there. Now I am reprinting the blocks like this, so I can just stick a whole bank of them on. Unfortunately, I got the measurements of this one slightly wrong, and over a 10 feeder length like this, it ends up being out about 3 millimeters at this end. So I'm reprinting these now. They take about 8 hours to print, and I'll be able to put 3 banks like this along the front for 30 feeders, so I don't have to do them individually like this. That'll make them all much stronger. So that's it, one little block just like this. Feeders can come in and out individually. They don't require any other feeders to be removed in the process. It gets locked in place and no movement, no wobble at all. I'm putting a lot of force on this right now to get it to move. Does this solve the bouncing? Let's find out. All my feeders are back on. It took a little bit longer to do than I had planned because I ran out of those little sticky tabs. So I had to find an alternative way of doing it, but they're all in, they're all locked, there's no movement. They are really firm. So the question is, does it make any difference to the bouncing? My gut says no, but you never know. I'm happy to be proved wrong. Let's find out. Okay, I've got the lights off and the brightness down. Let's turn the machine on. Hopefully you'll be able to see what pops up on the screen. Excellent. Let's home the machine. Okay, I have no idea what state the pickup position is going to be, but let's have a look at stack 21, which is my FET, which is one of the worst offenders. Now remember, I've still got my inline valves and I've still got my pressure regulator in this. So this is not a locked feeder on the stock machine. This still has my modifications to it. Okay. Oh, look at that. First part out. Bounce. Let's not even talk about the fact that the alignment's out, right? First part, bounce. Second part, bounce. Third part looks okay. Fourth part, bounce. I mean, that's 3 out of 4, right? Should I continue? I don't know. Let's have a look at my 100k resistors. They fail on me all the time. So these are 0402 in paper tape. Okay, look at the alignment. Holy moly. First part looks good. Oh, flipped. There you go. 50%. Wow. Whoa, look at that. So, I think this concludes once and for all that there is something else wrong with this machine and that locking the feeders in place was not the solution. Is it helping? Maybe. I don't know. It's very hard to A/B test it, right? But clearly, the locking of the feeders or the looseness of the feeders was not causing the bounce. I mean, these feeders are not moving. They are 100% locked in place. I'd end up bending the metal back that holds the reels if I try to push them any harder, and they just don't move. So, there you go. Paper tape does not work, even though Charm High state clearly that it was tested with paper tape and it works perfectly. Does not work. So they're my two extremes. Pretty sure if I go through every single other part, I'm going to see the same results, because this is no different to what I was seeing before. I don't know what I'm going to show you next on this machine. At some point I might show you it actually running, but the problem is every time I run a board on this, I might get a board out of it, I might get a panel that I then have to spend 15 or 20 minutes flipping parts back the right way, but I get so much wastage in between, so I'm just losing too many components building boards right now. So it's not just a matter of loss of time, it's costing me for the 30 or 40% of parts that are being rejected every single panel. It's got to be increasing my BOM cost by at least 10 or 15%. It's just crazy. I can't keep doing this. Okay, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this. Catch you later. Bye.